Hi, I'm Marsha Mason, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
Folks, welcome back to we're going to call it a finale, our finale of season 7. It is none other than Anne and Damien here with you for You Might Know Her From. Welcome.
Hello, folks. Hello, Anne. Welcome back. Welcome to our finale. What does it mean? Who knows? It means that this cluster of episodes is coming to an end, and what a joy it has been to come back into your gushy ear holes weekly and bring these stories of women in the arts, in entertainment, back weekly. I just love doing this project more than anything.
Same. And we know that we have loyal listeners. We have new listeners. The Marsha Mason heads have hopefully found us since we are closing out the seventh season of You Might Know Her From with Marsha Mason, we have called her the patron saint of our live show, which we did our very first live show this season. It's been a big one for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We returned weekly. We did our live show.
We went to Denver.
Oh my God. We went to Denver and did a live show there. We did a workshop. We really feel like the momentum has been building, and it makes total sense to us that we have to close out this season with our patron saint, Marsha Mason. So Damien, you get into it a little bit, but can you just talk about what has Marsha Mason meant to you this season?
I have to say that I'm embarrassed to admit that I was not super fluent in Marsha Mason's oeuvre, and getting to watch Cinderella, Liberty, The Goodbye Girl, Only When I Laugh, getting to dig into her body of work has been so rewarding. And I think because we get into it a little bit, but I think because of the way her performances and the way her career have been talked about in bigger film conversations, it's not enough for me. And so getting to watch all of those movies in quick succession and experience her acting style, which is somehow really raw and real, but also sexy and every woman. And I can't express how much somehow her work really washed over me. And I was going through a particularly kind of blue time when I was watching all of those movies, and something about her really raw vulnerability was, I don't know. I'm really having a trouble finding the words to say how much I was really moved to really dig into her work, and how thrilling it was to sit down with my best friend and Marsha Mason and get to talk to her about her incredible career that is continuing and has taken so many shapes and forms, which is writing and directing and all of the things. I hope you enjoy this interview because it was really just the bee's knees for us.
You might know her from The Goodbye Girl,
Chapter 2,
The Middle,
Grace and Frankie,
Drop Dead Fred,
Heartbreak Ridge,
Only When I Laugh,
Frasier,
Cinderella, Liberty,
and Judy Garland, Me and My Shadows.
I can't state strongly enough what an important day this is for Damien and I, because we are here with none other than actress, director, 4-time Oscar nominee, Marsha Mason. Marsha, welcome to You Might Know Her From.
Well, thank you.
We have so much to dive into, and I feel like we've been on a real journey exploring parts of your career that we weren't familiar with. So for anyone that doesn't know, you're a prolific stage and screen actor. Of course, you've had multiple acts in your career, and this is one of the things that we love about you. So for our listeners, you ended up leaving Hollywood after this huge film career, building an organic herb farm in New Mexico from the ground up. You also drove GT3 race cars and even owned your own racing car team for a couple of years. I am so inspired by the fact that in the last decade or so, you have also apprenticed under your dear friend, Broadway director and legend, Jack O'Brien, serving as associate director on his Broadway productions of All My Sons and The Roommate. So we know that you've been directing regionally in the theater, but can you talk to us about what it is about your relationship with Jack that brought you back to Broadway as an assistant director?
Just to be totally fair, Robin Goodman, who's a Broadway producer, was years ago, along with Carol Rothman, started the Second Stage. And that was in the 1980s. And Robin gave me the opportunity to direct an off-Broadway show with Mary Kay Place and Betty Buckley. and another gentleman. And that was the beginning of the directing. And then it was the regional theaters that gave me another, opportunity. And consequently, Arizona Theater Company was one of the first regionals to give me an opportunity to direct, probably 2015, 2016, something like that. And then I wound up directing twice here before. And then, meanwhile, Jack, who I had known since my days at ACT, where he directed me in a season at the theater there in San Francisco. And so we go back into the, 72 or something like that, 1972. Meanwhile, Jack, was doing all kinds of wonderful things, became the artistic director at the Old Globe. And we remained friends all those years. I worked for him there in San Diego and everything. And he was always so supportive of my directing ability. But he was a big Broadway producer of musicals as well as plays.
Yeah.
And finally, gave me an opportunity with All My Sons to be an associate, because I had at least now was considered a regional director and had some experience behind me. But he's the one that really pushed me and said, you can do this. And so I'm really very grateful to both Robin Goodman and Robin. Even when she and Josh took over Bucks County Playhouse, they gave me the opportunity to direct twice there. So yeah, it's been a really wonderful relationship because of those two people in particular.
It's a pretty incredible, like other act of your career. And one of the things that was so cool was reading about how, like, the famous theater lore is that you went to see previews of A Chorus Line, and that it was you who convinced Michael Bennett, like, Cassie needs to get the job at the end of the show so the audience leaves walking away with some sort of hope. Like, do you think that that was your director brain working then?
Yes. I mean, to a great extent, probably. Yeah. But it was also just pure feeling and my love for the theater and my love for entertainment that gave me that really strong feeling. But as well, this was right after, of course, that I married Neil Simon. And I had the same conversation when I was doing Cinderella Liberty, because in the original script of Cinderella Liberty, the sailor and the prostitute don't wind up together. And I kept arguing with Mark that, to spend an hour and a half rooting for two people and then they don't wind up together. And I remember that both Mark and the screenwriter who had written the book, they said, but that's not real life. And I said, but people don't go to the movies for real life. I mean, we go hopefully to be inspired, to entertain, to learn something, to feel, some level of more than what we're feeling in life. And it was just kind of strange that Michael Bennett would say the same thing to me. So I said, Cassie really feels she has, after all that hard work. And he said, but that's not what happens. And I said, and I just repeated my litany of reasons for the fact that they should.
I think that that's such a salient point about Cinderella Liberty. I think it's such a stunning performance. And I think the film, the lens is like kind of misogynistic at the end because you spend so much time invested in her journey and like how imperfect she is. The audience deserves a happy ending because of how far they've come with her. And then it just gets to be like the man's story that he steps up as a single dad to like her biracial child. And it's like, no, they should have taken your note.
But Mark did ultimately, because under the credits, he added a scene with Jimmy and the young boy, and they were playing basketball. And in the scene, he says, let's go find her. So, he did, but it was probably too late. I think the movie would have done even better, but it did very well. So I can't complain.
So just tying us back to a recent moment that I thought our audience should know about if they didn't see it. It kind of went theatrically viral recently when Mia Farrow had to call out of the roommate, and you as associate director went on in her place for a live performance with book in hand. And it was in fact not you, Marsha Mason, who went up on her lines because you had the book. It was Patti Lupone, who should have been memorized. But it was, I don't know why it was captured on film. You know, I can't advocate for bootlegs, but it is kind of glorious that the whole thing exists because it's so charming. The audience is behind both of you the whole time. Patti cannot find her place in the scene. She's probably thrown because, you know, you're not Mia, but like you are so generous and so kind and so patient with her. And then the voice of God comes in. It's a wonderful moment. Like, was that whole moment thrilling for you to sort of be in that with her?
Well, in that same performance, earlier in the scene, I lost my place in the book and said, "Where am I?" to Patti. And she pointed to the thing. I said, "Thank you." And we continued on. But I think it threw Patti's rhythm up so that she wound up going up. And I kept saying, "But here's the line, here's the line." And she says the most wonderful thing that only an actor will understand. She said, "But I learned it a certain way." So I think ultimately I may have been part of the reason why she went up and not because she didn't know her own lines.
Yeah, yeah.
But the audience was so gracious and wonderful. And Jack said to me, because he was there, and he said to me, "You know, it's those moments for an audience that are just magnificent and magical." And the other part of it that's really quite lovely that he said was, because the two of us are true professionals, we were able to engage the audience in a real moment and then take them and bring them back into the story as the two characters. And we just went on. And so it really was a wonderful experience for all those reasons. And I wound up, because Mia had gotten COVID.
Right.
So I wound up doing it for 4 performances, which was kind of wonderful, you know, so it worked out.
Yeah. And it's the glory, as you said, I've seen 2 real professionals like deal with a problem in real time and endear themselves to the audience. It's great.
Yeah.
So while we're on the directing tip, I just think it's worth mentioning you've worked with obviously your fair share of film auteur directors. So some of them we've mentioned already: Mark Rydell, Herbert Ross, Clint Eastwood, Jerome Hellman, Paul Mazursky, Gurinder Chadha, Robert Wise. Are any of those people that you would identify as an actor's director? And is that something you think of about yourself as a director?
Well, Mark was started out, and so did Paul. So they were 2 of my first film directors. And I think because they were actors, they were able to speak to me in languages, or I trusted what I heard from them. And so I remember, for example, Paul Mazursky, when we were doing, there was one nude scene in Bloomin' Love. And all he did was he just leaned down to me and whispered in my ear, "You're 5 years old." And of course, I was playing a grown-up character. And I instinctively knew what that meant. I think one of the experiences I had years later was I was doing a kind of student trailer for a young film director, and with John Mahoney. And the thing that I noticed right away is that he did not have a vocabulary to be able to speak to us because he had never been an actor. And I did notice then several years later when I looked at, say, the courses at some of these film schools, that because I feel that every director should act once. And they should write once, they should act once. Every writer for the screen or the theater should act once or direct once, you know? I remember there were several instances where actors would then direct, let's say, an episode of a series they were in or a film, and they would learn very quickly whether or not they were just acting the actor to act it the way they would, or would they be able to find a way to communicate to the purity of the character in their personality. So there is a difference, and so, but a good director will know how to communicate what he needs and wants.
Yeah.
I guess that's that's a baseline for a good film director anyway. And also too, the actor has to give up in film because the editing can change a performance. The director's focus can change the performance, It just depends on how they see the story.
Yeah.
So the perspective might be very different for the actor than it is for the director.
So let's dive into your film work, Marsha. You were a leading lady of the 1970s cinema. Like, it's a historic time in movies. The studio system was dying. It was auteur-driven film, emphasis on more real, complex human stories. And you had this series of hits and award nominations. And then, as we mentioned, you left for New Mexico. You left Hollywood. How do you look back on that era of Hollywood and your place in cinema history?
Well, to some people, it's considered a golden period for film. And part of it is because there were more complex and varied characters in film. One of the things about Only When I Laugh is that it was 5 equal roles, you know what I mean? And it was about these 5 people. It's gotten harder because film has gotten more expensive, just the same way the whole world has gotten more expensive. It's just kind of shocking to me, the films that we made then, if they were $26 million or whatever it was, you know what I mean? It's just crazy, the zeros now.
Yeah.
And also in the mid 80s, when I made the move out of LA, it was because the business was changing. It was getting extremely youth oriented, and that was fine. I understood that. But I had to find a way to live my own life and stay creative somehow. I didn't leave the business, even if some people thought I did simply by not living in LA anymore. And of course, this is way before, all of social media and everything, where we're so much more, we can live in other places. Also, I was getting older and the parts weren't there, and I wanted to be challenged creatively, and began to find that the theater offered me that opportunity to play certain roles that I couldn't, there weren't those roles available in film. But I stayed open. I mean, even after I think I made the move to New Mexico, I still did Heartbreak Ridge, and thank goodness, Clint wanted me, so that was good. But then what happened was, a lot of TV came up. And so all those, wonderful, the Middle and Grace and Frankie and some of the, Lifetime movies I did. I played, a dressage driver, for Hallmark or something.
Yeah.
I remember, being on these trick horses. And so I had a lot of fun doing those things. There was another series called Army Wives or whatever. So
yeah,
I kept my fingers or my toes in the business, but it had changed a great deal. So I had to just adjust, if you will.
Yeah.
And mostly motivated for myself, in terms of my own creativity. I mean, I always had plenty of energy and I was always very curious. I mean, that's how I led to the racing. I didn't have enough to do, I used to say, And I, fortunately, because I knew Paul Newman, and I went one weekend to a race of his in Riverside, California, when I still lived there. And God, I traveled with the team for a year. And finally, Paul said to me, this is crazy. Why don't you go to racing school? I didn't even know they had racing schools.
Yeah.
So I went to Bob Bondurant's, I went to Russell, I went to one in Canada. I did them all. And then fortunately, because of the schools, I hooked up with, a wonderful lawyer, Mark Steinberg, who said, I think we should do a mom and pop thing. And there's a kid in Rialto that's got a, RX-3 or something. So one thing led to another. And if I had the time and I had some money, I just went. And then fortunately, I hooked up with a wonderful professional driver, Mike, who then joined his team, and he built a car for me, and we, traveled. And I would do, I think around 12 to 15 races a season.
Wow.
And of course, we could, the home team was still in California. So, we could get the cars out of the garage in January. So I was traveling from New Mexico to California and racing, whereas on the East Coast, Paul couldn't get his car out until May or June, so it turned out to be a really wonderful experience for me. And I just promised myself, if I hit a brick wall, I meant in terms of their accepting me, then I would stop. But everybody was very good and kind. It was a great group of people. The SCCA Racing Association is filled with really wonderful people. And you'll have teams that are spending $2 million to straight down to mom and pops where they're bringing the car on the back of their truck. So I met a very broad section of people. And I think that too enhanced my maturity and understanding and level of acceptance, compassion, empathy, whatever you want to call it. So I don't have any sort of preferences about a lot of things that maybe some other people do, because I was able to dip into other people's lives for a period of time on a weekend and see how they lived. And it was different from mine, but we're all different. So
yeah,
it's good.
I think it's kind of what we love about your career trajectory and how you've stayed curious and what makes like a holistic artist, obviously, and not just an actor for hire. Can you just share with us while we're talking about racing, how fast did you go? Because neither one of us own a car. We're not car people. We don't know anything about cars. How fast did you actually drive? What's the fastest you've driven?
The fastest I've ever driven was a specialty race. I did a vintage car race in Las Vegas on an old strip, a mile strip, not a quarter mile, a full mile. And it was in a Mustang, 700 horsepower Mustang with Mark. And I remember it was very interesting because it was just you and the road. You were not racing against another person. You were testing your ability and your speed from point A to point B. So I got up probably close to 200 miles an hour. And the thing that I learned.
Oh my God, Marsha, no, it's too much.
Well, but I wasn't making turns. Do you know what I mean? So it was just pedal to the metal. So, but the thing that I learned that was so interesting is in the distance on my right was a bird, a crow probably, who was very far away. But what I began to notice out of the corner of my eye was that the world was in slow motion when you're going that fast.
Yeah.
So the only thing I kept thinking about was that crow could hit the windshield. And if it does, I'm toast. So, it was like, that was a really exciting thing. And so today, when I see these F1 drivers, I have this feeling just a little bit of what it must be like for them. But I was in the old-fashioned things, double clutch downshifts and all of that they're now doing with their thumb. I was literally doing around a track. I went all the way to Ohio. I made the finals, Mid-Ohio finals 4 times, I think.
So cool.
Yeah.
So, Marsha, you've been 4-time Oscar nominated, all for lead actress for your performances in Cinderella Man, The Goodbye Girl, Chapter 2, and Only When I Laugh. Is there one of those nominations that stands out to you that you're particularly proud of? I know that that's maybe asking for a favorite child, but is one of those feel yes, that one holds up. I'm so proud of it, or all of them?
I would say of those 4, the 2 that make me feel the proudest is because of the work, not necessarily the final thing, but Cinderella Liberty, because that was the first time. And this is another interesting side note, which is I never went to a film acting. I just applied the same techniques and acting ability or training that I learned in the theater because I started in the theater. So I'm not sure, that it translated. So I feel very good about that. And then I think Only When I Laugh was a particularly personal, wonderful sort of ability to communicate that character. I liked that character.
Yes. Cinderella Liberty, I can't really say enough about it. I had not seen it prior, and I feel like it sort of set the blueprint for like what Michelle Williams did in Brokeback Mountain, the way that you're able to communicate so much in your like sexiness and hurt and sadness. It is an exquisite performance. It's just,
thank you.
I can't say enough. You're like the foremost interpreter of Neil Simon, his work in the cinema. Like, and all your nominations, but Cinderella Liberty were written by your then husband. Like, what did he get about you as an actor that like really worked well for those collaborations?
Well, that's really funny because he didn't think I really was right for his rhythm. And I mean, he would say that to me. In fact, when we did Cheap Detective, Lily Tomlin was to play the role. In fact, they had the costume and everything. And at the last minute, she couldn't because she had made a commitment to her one-person show.
Search for Signs for Intelligent Life.
Yeah. And I said, let me do it. And Neil said, no. And so I said, come on, let me do it, So I talked to the director and everything, and I did a scene for them. And I wound up doing Neil was surprised. I wound up doing
You were so good, and it was great to see you do like physical comedy and play Damien, what do we say? A gangster's mall.
Yeah, it's like you're playing against the type that we had seen you play on film, and that's very fun. Like you get to see your range, and you're in the blonde wig. It's very cool.
Well, I think because, we started out with Good Doctor and I was playing 4 different characters. But what Neil was referring to was the rhythms of some of his other plays. In fact, when we had the opportunity to do Prisoner of Second Avenue at the Royal Haymarket with Dreyfuss and myself, I knew that I would have to speak faster than I normally do to play that character. And so I understood why Neil might think that I didn't get his rhythm until I wound up doing it for him. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, when he was writing, he would give me scenes to read and ask my opinion of, what I thought. And some notes he took and some he didn't,
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I also say that it feels like, there's so much, the dialogue is like a Neil Simon thing, like the da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and the rhythms. But like what you do is ground that in the real world and real life. So that is why you are just as important to those collaborations and that writing.
That's exactly what it is.
Like you helped craft those pieces because of your performances. Like you are what grounds that stuff in the real world, even if the dialogue quippiness was his writing, you know?
Yeah. I just always tried to tell the truth to whatever that meant to me. As that character, what was my truth? Granted, it's my interpretation, but it's my truth. And I do believe that as long as the actor is truthful, it's telling the truth, then you believe it.
Yeah.
You believe it.
We were talking you mentioned Lily Tomlin.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about Grace and Frankie in a second, but we were wondering if there's any sense of community of sort of that era in the 70s where we had sort of these really great roles for lead women. So that was like Jane Fonda, Faye Dunaway, Diane Keaton, Ellen Burstyn, Glenda Jackson, Julie Christie, Jenna Rollins, Barbara Streisand, Jill Clayburgh. Like, were any of these people your people? Did you feel in community with any of them? Or was there tension there because? No,
there wasn't any tension, at least for me. In fact, I felt like you kind of knew each other because you'd been there. Mm-hmm. And to this day, Jane Fonda and I are friends. So we wound up on Broadway together in 2 different shows and kind of organized, not organized.
Like reconnected while you were there?
Yes. And then I think that's why Grace and Frankie happened. Do you know what I mean? And then there was that, which was great. And I just think she's an amazing person. I just can't get over what she does. I mean, her energy.
Well, I would say that about the both of you. Maybe it's
they're-
what you guys have in common is you both have are still seeking at this point in your career and doing philanthropic work and working in new artistic ways. I mean, it really was a thrill to see you on Grace and Frankie, where you show up as Arlene, like one of the college friends, and watching you and Lily and Swoosie Kurtz with Jane Fonda. I mean, was that a fun, easy set? It seems like they did it for so long because it must have been fun.
It was fun. Absolutely. It was a great group, and we all got along. Everybody worked hard. And two people who worked the hardest were Jane and Lily. I mean, it was amazing. And it just goes to prove that age has nothing to do with it. You know,
completely.
It just doesn't. It just doesn't. But unfortunately, you know, there's still a certain amount of hesitation from people about older people.
It's so fascinating. You know, we talked to June Squibb. This was before she came back to Broadway to do Marjorie Prime, but we were talking to her about Thelma and then Eleanor the Great, and just like,
wasn't she amazing in Eleanor the Great?
Incredible.
She's incredible.
She was amazing.
She's incredible. And like that want to still do the thing at 95. It's like if people are willing to make the work, you know, and write the work and produce the work, that there are artists that are still want to be in those conversations, you know?
Absolutely. And until, you know, your brain just doesn't help you or you physically can't, you know, stand on 2 feet. Well, even if you couldn't, you could still do it. But yeah, it's the passion for it and the ability to stay focused. That's real. I mean, memorization is just, that's it. That's everything, you know? But for example, I did this off-Broadway show, Little Gem, which was an Irish play. So I had to use a Northern Irish accent. It was a 3-generational, and it was a series of monologues. And I'm telling you, it was like performing a book, because I had something like 5 or 6 long, single-spaced monologues. And so I just had to memorize all of that. And it gave me such terror. But at the same time, once I accomplished it and was able to do it consistently for 8 performances a week, all I did was I just did the entire show in the afternoon before I went on that night, or vice, you know, if it was breakfast at breakfast, I did it for the matinee. But that's all. And then to be able to do it gave me such a level of confidence about what I'm capable of doing. So you do have to terrify yourself and take big chances.
Yeah.
But if you do, and listen, it's okay if you fail. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's the trying that's probably the most important.
I feel like it's been very inspiring to hear all of this from you. So sorry if we're bringing you a lot of excited energy, but I feel like we talk to a lot of actresses, and it's actually really thrilling to hear people that are still so invested in new artistic work or challenging themselves. Because, you know, you could also be sitting, you know, resting on your laurels in
which
Connecticut or whatever.
I also understand sometimes too, like wanting to take a break.
Yeah, and there are days when I wish I had done that. You bet. If you had seen me yesterday, I would have been an ancient.
You were running. You said you were running, though. You ran through that airport. I'm impressed.
Yeah. And it was tough. Let me tell you, my arms were down to my feet by the time I got into the plane. Oh.
So Marsha, we just want to dive into a couple specific performances. So obviously The Goodbye Girl in 1977 is like a romantic comedy classic. You're Paula McFadden, this out of work dancer, recently dumped. This movie, obviously written by Neil Simon, directed by Herbert Ross. This is a stone cold classic. There's a lot of attention that's been given to you and Richard Dreyfuss's dynamic, but we were really taken with your performance with Quinn Cummings, who was also Oscar nominated as your daughter. You guys were so charming and sweet and streetwise, and it felt so lived in. What was that working relationship like? Because you were a pro and you had a 9-year-old as a scene partner. Were you protective of her on set? set? How did you guide her, if at all?
But first of all, that was a time in which one could rehearse. So we had a full week's rehearsal before we started shooting. And we were actually on the set in the studio. And I remember very clearly, now, first of all, Quinn was a brilliant young person and extremely precocious, and rightly so, because she was so smart at 9. And there was a scene that we were doing, and I noticed that she did it exactly the same way through a little series of crossing the room and sitting in the chair. And it was like memorized. And so what I did was I started the scene and I sat in the chair, and just to see what would happen to her. And she adjusted. And I did that as an actor to an actor, because you have to be prepared to be able to be spontaneous, because after a while, if it's by rote, then you lose the truth of it,
Yeah.
But from that moment on, we connected, and she was beautiful and wonderful. And what most people don't know is her father died while we were shooting the film. He was a young guy. He was in his 40s, and it was a sudden death. And that little girl, that was a tough, incredible thing. But the crew, they loved her. And as a present, they gave her the entire works of Shakespeare at 9, because they knew she could read it,
Wow.
and absorb it.
Yeah.
So she was really incredible. And she's gone on to be a very, very smart woman and very present in social media and has a family of her own. And she did a lot of different things. She went on and did some television afterwards, and then decided that she didn't want to do that anymore. And she became a casting person. And then just a couple years ago, we wound up doing a 25 or 30-year-old or whatever thing on Seth Rudetsky's show.
Yeah.
And we were all on it together, which was really cool.
So one of the coolest tidbits about The Goodbye Girl is that the film was originally directed by Mike Nichols and had a totally different script called Bogart Slept Here that was, to my understanding, inspired by the real life story of Dustin Hoffman becoming a movie star after The Graduate.
That's true.
And it was you and Robert De Niro at the time, and you actually shot for a few weeks, but then everything was thrown out. Robert De Niro and Mike Nichols left, and Neil Simon rewrote the screenplay to essentially end where the old one started.
That's right. Yeah.
How did that process affect your performance?
It didn't really. It was kind of odd, but it didn't, because Neil understood that we were headed in the wrong direction, the writing and, whatever they were watching in terms of dailies. We only shot, I think, for 2 weeks before and it was, the studio was behind it. Everybody was, trying very hard to figure it out. I stayed out of it, and I just, had to see how it all panned out, because of course none of us knew that it would be the picture that it was. You never know that when you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
But Neil realized somehow that people are not going to care about this couple if they're already successful. And once he did that, then he had, a serious conversation with everybody, and we shut it down, and we started again.
Do you think we'll ever see those dailies of you and Robert De Niro? Will they ever put them on a special edition Blu-ray or something?
No, because there wasn't enough that was shot.
I see.
We were actually, I think there's only maybe one scene maybe 2 scenes. I think our arrival in Los Angeles and a scene in the kitchen before he becomes famous and everything. But he is famous, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the performance is when you read the letter in the very beginning from the boyfriend who abandoned you. Like the way you communicate what is written on that letter on your face without the audience knowing is incredible. Like,
Oh, thank you.
what advice would you give a young actor about like reading and acting? Because what you do is a master class. You're not receiving anything but what theoretically is on that paper.
Well, you just have to connect to the emotional truth of that moment. You have to find your Maggie, or you have to find your, whatever the character's name is. And you have to find that moment that you get dumped.
Yep.
And be brave enough to show it, or to be thinking of it as you are reading. Actually, acting is really thinking. It's thinking clearly and hard. Yeah, thinking hard and clearly. Specifically, maybe is a better word.
So Patricia Heaton actually played your role in the 2004 Goodbye Girl remake opposite Jeff Daniels. Was that some sort of Easter egg for people that love actresses like ourselves when you would later play her mom on The Middle?
No, I don't think so. I don't.
Okay.
Because then I no.
It's a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah, it is, definitely. And I adored her, and we had a great time working together. In fact, I will tell you honestly that I asked for her to do the roommate, and she couldn't. She's, too busy.
Yeah.
But I did it anyway. I just said, I'm going to shoot for it. I doubted that she would do it, but
That's cool, though. Yeah.
I like that. You're trying to inspire television actors. You're an artist, and I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I knew that she's good. I saw her. Yeah, it's on Second Stage when she did a play there.
So you garnered another Oscar nom for 1979's Chapter 2 opposite your Cinderella Liberty co-star James Caan. It's another Neil Simon, Herbert Ross collaboration, loosely inspired by your relationship with Neil. Did you feel like you were playing a version of yourself, or did Jenny feel like a totally fictionalized character by the time you stepped onto set?
I didn't feel Jenny was fictionalized. I felt that I knew her.
Yeah.
So all I had to do was just be her.
She was one of yourselves, as you say in your autobiography, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Was Neil on set for that shoot, and was any of it kind of a mind fuck to have him there since it was sort of loosely based on you all?
No, it was
okay.
We had, it's very unusual because I've talked to married couples who work together, and invariably the majority of them don't do it because it creates too many difficulties in their personal life, or vice versa. I don't, But for Neil and I, we had one of the best professional relationships. I think because we just respected each other. I remember even after we got divorced, there was still a lot of affection. And he came, to see The Prisoner. He was there for the rehearsals and everything. And we were able to share that experience purely and enjoy it and have fun and laugh at each other and have a good time. And then, I could go out to dinner with he and his betrothed, Elaine, and it was okay. It was all okay by that time.
That's lovely. Maybe there aren't any, but are there any misconceptions about your relationship that you would want to quash?
No, first of all, Neil, he was almost a generation older than me.
Yeah.
So he had certain issues in terms of a patriarchal attitude and a controlling attitude. And quite honestly, and I've said this before, going to New Mexico was one of the most important things I ever did and the racing too, because I could never have done that if I had stayed married. So I'm grateful for the period, the almost 10 years that we had together, and we did beautiful work together, and we raised two girls together, or at least one of them, because Ellen was already 15 and pretty much on her, becoming a young woman. But Ellen, to this day, I'm close to both of them, Ellen and Nancy. And Ellen, kind of followed me to New Mexico for a period of time. And then she wound up following me to Connecticut. And now she's, in Northampton with her own son and grandson and everything. And we're all still a family. So that part is really kind of wonderful. And so it was perfect for when it was. And that's it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And evolved for what it's worth.
Ellen actually wrote a semi-autographical play that then was turned into the 1995 film Moonlight and Valentino. It stars Elizabeth Perkins, Whoopi Goldberg, Gwyneth Paltrow, and former guest of this show, Kathleen Turner, who who's playing a role loosely inspired by you. What was it like to see Kathleen as you, quote unquote?
Oh, it was great because, to see Ellen's talent in the movie, you know what I mean? I was just looking at it from the point of view as, oh my God, she's so gifted. This is great, And I loved all the characters, that she, and the way she saw them. And we were all through her eyes, through her perspective. It was just great. I hope she continues to write. So
me too. Okay, so we mentioned Only When I Laugh, written by Neil Simon, based on the play The Gingerbread Lady, about a recovering alcoholic actress who is struggling with her sobriety. She's reconnecting with her estranged daughter, played by Christy McNichol. The film demands a lot of you emotionally, and it's noted as being one of Neil's more dramatic pieces. That phone call where you're calling your sponsor, it's an iconic scene. You're at a phone bang.
It's so interesting. Everybody relates to that moment.
That moment is burned in cinema history. This is 81, long before alcoholism or addiction is in the mainstream, the way we have conversations about talking about it as a disease and whatnot. Did this film feel like a groundbreaking piece then to you?
No. As a matter of fact, that a lot of times when I read film scripts, sometimes images come to me and they really help me a lot, to understand what the scene. And the way I imagined it was in one of those English old-fashioned booth.
Like a phone booth, like a red phone booth.
So when we got to the location and it was a bank of telephone, things on a wall in a building, a corporate building, it was so seared to me. I knew it's so funny about if you're clear, then it translates. What I understood to be as important as what I was saying was how I held the phone. Mm. And so I've had people say to me, it was so white knuckled, you know what I mean? And so I thought, I just knew that that's the level of the intensity. Do you know what I mean? It had to be that strong, that clear. And it was nervous making for me because here was this big bank. I didn't have anything to protect me. There was no way to hide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had to just imagine. But fortunately, because of the way it was shot, and in those days, they didn't have the little monitors that they have now. So everybody had to be around the corner. So they couldn't see it until they saw the dailies. So it was just the cameraman and the focus puller and myself, basically. So it was, it had its own intimacy. But you never know if something's going to translate or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I always just felt, the camera either loves you or they don't. I don't know.
The rumor was that the play was written for Maureen Stapleton. Yeah. I think Neil denied that at some point, but she would win a Tony for the play in 1970. A, did you see that? And B, was it intimidating taking on a role she had immortalized on stage?
No, strangely enough, what was really interesting is that shortly after we got married, we went to London in the dead of winter to see Elaine Stritch in Brighton or somewhere do the Gingerbread Lady.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had two different performances that were both brilliant in my head, but then I forgot them and realized, and also for the film, it was just different. I was able to
Yeah.
But again, there was that moment where Neil was unsure and then, of course, wasn't. And I understood because I come from an Irish Russian family and there was a lot of drinking when I was young. So
I was very charmed to know that you're a Missouri girl. I am too. I'm from Columbia and you're from St. Louis.
Oh
so.
my God.
I was like, it makes sense to me that Neil Simon was like, she doesn't get the rhythms of the East Coast, but I'm like, we can get it. We can get it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Marsha, we're switching gears a little bit here because we need to tackle your villainous role in the 1991 cult film Drop Dead Fred. This is co-starring Phoebe Cates and Carrie Fisher. This is a wild film about an adult woman's imaginary friend returning into her life while she's having a mental breakdown. It is so ridiculously fun to see you in this kind of role where you're sort of like a withholding, abusive mother. But the film kind of was a flop, but in the course of time has become this cult favorite with this huge following. Was the critical reception a shock? Do you pay attention to those things? Or was it like something that you got on set and you're like, oh, this is doomed?
No, what I did feel while we were shooting it was that Focus, I think Pictures, and was the main people. But it was ostensibly, they thought it was for 14 and 15-year-olds. And very shortly after we started, I realized this is a 9 or 10-year-old movie.
Yeah.
So it didn't surprise me in some ways that there was a misunderstanding of who the audience was for the film.
Yeah.
But both Tony Fingleton, who wrote it, and I are good friends. We became friends then. And as a matter of fact, just as a side note, I've been working with him on one of his films called Swimming Upstream to turn it into a play and a theatrical event. And so we've been working on it for about, I think, 3 years now. But to that point, both he and I are just stunned at how many people saw the film and what it meant to them. Not unlike The Goodbye Girl, you know what I mean? I get, grandmothers and mothers, and daughters of mothers and granddaughters of grandmothers, who, it may, and the Drop Dead Fred has the same kind of following.
Yeah, we grew up with it. It was like important to our generation.
There was a point when you were writing a book to a musical based on Drop Dead Fred. Is that any updates on that particular?
No, they're very interested in doing it. And they are, I think, working out the rights from Universal or whoever it is that technically owns it. But I do believe that there's some people that are definitely interested in turning it into a musical. And Tony and I had started working on it as a musical from a writing point of view. And so we'll see, if it gets any legs. Yeah.
So cool.
There's an audience for it.
I think it could be a great musical.
Yeah.
I agree.
The premise totally works for a musical.
And I thought you could certainly update it, you know what I mean? But the imaginary characters, all of it is just rife for a musical, I think, with the right people.
Totally agree. Okay, Marsha, you've spent so much of your film career falling in love or yelling at men on celluloid. So we were thrilled to discover the 90s sitcom Sibs, a one-season ABC series where you get to headline opposite Margaret Collin and Jamie Gertz's sister. So it's a woman-centric show. It was created by Tracy Ullman, show creator Heidi Perlman, executive produced by James L. Brooks. The show was canceled, but then retooled as a new pilot with Margaret and Jamie reprising their roles. But you did not return. How come?
I don't know, because they did it after it shut down. So
okay, you were just like, I'm good. I'm good on it.
22 or 25 episodes, and I guess they're shown in Malaysia somewhere.
Yeah.
But no, they retooled. I think part of it was because somehow the chemistry wasn't working, not because of us. The three of us got along great. But whatever the whole, world, because that was a very, very different world. That was my my main entrance into series work. And James, he had a very big deal with, ABC or whoever it was and it was considered a very important deal. So I don't know, all the people that were involved in making all the decisions are a mystery to me.
It was a missed opportunity. If you have Marsha Mason, underrated, legendary film actor, you need to make it work. It felt like a missed opportunity. And it was great to see you get to play with women for a change. But you return to the sitcom world. A few years later, Emmy-nominated turn is Sherry, John Mahoney's girlfriend on Frasier. You mentioned John Mahoney earlier. Sherry she's sort of a broad. She's like a waitress. She's a former Vegas showgirl. She plays the banjo. How did that come? How did they reel you back into the sitcom? Because Heidi Perlman, she was a writer on Frasier, but maybe you were friends with John Mahoney. How did that come to be?
I believe it was through John, because John wanted to have a storyline for himself and created this storyline of girlfriends for John. And I think John had given them a list and I was on it. And so I got hired, and it was to be a one-off, you know what I mean? But we all connected in a really wonderful way. So they wound up writing, I think, 3 or 4 more episodes.
Yeah, I think you're in 7 or 8 episodes, and it's great. Yeah. It's great to see you you are great in that format. You're excellent, and it's fun to see you play sort of abroad. I feel like it was a different version of you.
Well, it was interesting because I had heard surreptitiously that some of the producers were a little nervous about me playing that kind of role of Sherry.
Honey, it's acting. She's a star. What are we talking about?
But, people don't, especially, people not necessarily creative people, but they're making decisions, don't always understand that. So they don't have the imagination or the risk or whatever. They, and rightly so, it's fine. But what was really cool is I was told that, and it may be apocryphal, I don't know, but they thought of me more as an Armani kind of person. They didn't see me, as that character. But what was really interesting was I read the script and I immediately thought of ruffles but I thought of, white patent leather boots, sort of harking back to my days where I would wear, a hot pink pants and stuff like that. Anyway, so then I talked to the costume designer and she said, I'm thinking maybe ruffles. And I'm like, yes, we get it.
You saw it. You saw it.
So when all of them come down, and there's 15 or 20 chairs put up and it's the first time. And I think I read relief on all these corporate faces, that, okay, it's okay. We're going to work fine.
She's got it.
Yeah.
Okay, Marsha Mason, we've reached the part of the show we like to call the rapid fire. It's so we can get in every last credit, take whatever time you need, but we're going to give it to you rapid fire. Okay. Marsha, you played Ethel Gumm, Judy Garland's domineering mother in one of the greatest television movies of all time, Me and My Shadows. Did you work closely with Lorna Luft at all? And what sort of research did you do on Ethel, who by many accounts was a pretty aggressive force in her daughter's life?
I strictly looked at pictures and read everything I could get my hands on.
It's a great performance with Tammy Blanchard, and I honestly think I wish that had been a feature film. I mean, it's really a great thing.
It's really good, yeah.
Okay, Marsha, The Goodbye Girl was turned into a stage musical in 1987 with Martin Short and Bernadette Peters. What was it like seeing a role you had originated transformed into a musical?
Well, I went and saw it, I think in Chicago, and it was terrific. I don't remember the music, so maybe that's part of the reason why Yeah.
Okay, one of your first TV roles was as a young woman who got turned into a vampire by Barnabas Collins in the famous nighttime gothic soap Dark Shadows. Please talk to us about the prosthetic teeth they used to achieve that vampire effect in 1969.
All they did was literally put on 2 little things here, and it was really hard. And I came up with that idea of all the teased hair, Yeah. I mean, you got to remember it was in black and white, And
yeah.
So, and I didn't think anybody knew of it. And do you know, to this day, I will get fan mail with a picture from that show. It's just unbelievable.
It's so great. It has a huge following. And
Yeah.
watching that episode, you can stream it online. I will link out to it. I think it's on Prime. But yeah, it's a really fun performance. And the show is so, so fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, Marsha, you appear in the 1977 psychological horror film Audrey Rose, directed by Robert Wise, who also directed West Side Story and The Sound of Music. This movie is sort of like Exorcist adjacent, but through the lens of reincarnation, which I think was maybe the first time that had been talked about in film. Like, it puts you through the emotional and physical ringer, and like, you're going head to head with Anthony Hopkins. Like, do you have any war stories from what appeared to be a very athletic shoot in this Manhattan townhouse?
It was really hard, and especially trying to deal with something that I didn't necessarily experience personally, which is the loss of a child. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that part was really hard. But what I loved, and the reason I did the film, is because, well, number one, because of Robert Wise, just wanting to, learn from him.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it was reincarnation. And I had been studying Eastern religions and spirituality and philosophy for quite a long period of time, ever since I got out of college. So I was really curious to explore that subject matter within a character.
And I think you've said that you are close friends with Shirley MacLaine, who is also on a similar tip and is a New Mexico neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Shirley and I were very good friends all the years because she was the one that found the land that I wound up buying.
The farm?
The farm. And she said, there's this land, Marsha, it's down below. I'm buying the mountain, but you could take a look at this land. I think it'd be great. So I went and looked at the land and I said, okay. And so for years we would have, if we were together, we'd have Thanksgiving or Christmas or dinner or whatever. And she'd come down that mountain in a go-kart, and she one year dressed as Santa or something. And it was great. We had great years together. It was lovely.
It's very cool. Yeah, I think there's an Oprah video of her giving a tour of her New Mexico home. And she says, like, a dancer died at the top of these stairs. That's why I bought this house. I said, I love Shirley MacLaine.
No,
I love
she was
her.
heavy into it. In fact, she introduced me to some channelers and that I went to and all kinds of stuff. I mean, she's way out there, she's out there with not just extraterrestrials, but the next level up. But the reincarnation and the whole issue for that particular movie was what really made me want to do it, that and to at least have had the opportunity to work with Bob Wise.
Yeah. Okay, you played Clint Eastwood's ex-wife, rekindled old flame in the military film Heartbreak Ridge. You all have a complicated past, and at one point in the film, you slap him both forwards and backwards. On a scale of 1 to 10, Marsha Mason, how good did that feel?
It was extraordinary to be able to do it. And that he let me do it.
Yeah.
Listen, he is an interesting guy. There's no question about it. And he is strangely enough, for a guy that famous, when you see him on a set, you don't find him because there's absolutely no ego energy coming from him. He just knows what it is he wants to do. And he's very knowledgeable and he's incredible.
Yeah.
There was that scene, we're dancing on a tiny little platform out at night with colored lights, and we have dialogue together. And so after we finished shooting it, we did it like 2 or 3 times from different angles, and the camera was moving around us. While we were dancing and acting, he was maneuvering me in kind of interesting ways, and I wasn't sure what it was, but I went with it. And so I said, what were you thinking when we were doing that? And he said, I was watching the light play across your face to make sure that it looked good. And I thought, wow. So
That's a pro
was
move.
dancing, acting, and directing all at the same time. So that's a pretty great guy.
Yeah.
Okay, Marsha Mason, last question. So you were 4-time Oscar nominated. You lost to Glenda Jack. I'm going to say, you lost, but we're saying this like this, quote unquote. You lost to Glenda Jackson for A Touch of Glass, Diane Keaton, Annie Hall, Sally Field, Norma Rae, Katharine Hepburn on Golden Pond. Is one of those most disappointing or like annoying?
Yeah, maybe Glenda Jackson.
Tell me why.
Well, only because I don't remember. Who did I lose to for Only When I Laugh?
It's Katharine Hepburn. Yeah, that's Katharine Hepburn for On Golden Pond.
That one, you knew.
Right. They were going to give it to her for sure.
I think Glenda Jackson was when you were up for Cinderella Liberty.
Well, if it was the first one, then, I didn't expect it either, because I didn't think that, nobody knew who I was then. You know what I mean? It was, there was no way that they knew who I was. And you have to go back and remember how small the social media, there was no social media.
There wasn't, yeah.
I mean? And they showed the picture for 1 week prior to Christmas, to be eligible, and only because 20th Century Fox thought that Jimmy would get nominated. That was what was really the reason that it got the week's, showing. And then they didn't put any money into it, afterwards. Right. So there you go.
Marsha Mason, we have interviewed over 150 women for this project. We care so much about women, hearing their stories, looking at like film and theater through the lens of a woman actor's journey. And I have to say, like, what an incredible career you've had. And thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. You are the most underrated and most important woman to cinema. And it's very important to us that you were able to chat with us today. So thank you so much. Thank you for caring enough about the arts to keep reinventing yourself and trying all these different things.
Thank you. That's really lovely. I'm truly grateful. Thank you very much. You're going to make me cry, so don't do that.
Getting Marsha Mason to admit that it was so thrilling to slap Clint Eastwood back and forth across the face is one of my greatest accomplishments in the history of You Might Know Her From. Oh, I loved it. She was just, I really, listening back to this interview, I was just so moved, maybe in the way that you were moved by sort of like diving into her body of work, which by the way is the project of this show, in case you listeners, I know you're along for the ride, but that is the joy of this, is like really getting to discover someone's work and dive in. But I was really moved by how grounded and funny and real she was. And just like, at peace seems like such a stupid thing to say about someone, but she just seemed real level in a way that was very charming to me. Had great perspective, smart, funny, knows who she is, inquisitive, curious, stays curious. And I think that's what is so inspiring about talking to these people who are like, I'm not satisfied. And not like because I need more fame or more money, but I'm actually interested in like, what is it to become a director? And what is it to work with actors? And what is it to like travel and work regionally? And what is it to move to New Mexico and be neighbors with Shirley MacLaine? Like,
love that moment of you getting to bring up the dead dancer ghost.
Oh God, it's one of, again, I feel like this checked so many boxes for us. And please, 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 it is our job here at You Might Know Her From to make sure that you guys know about the actresses that we love, and let us know if there's people that we don't know about, because I feel like that's part of the game. This is a reciprocal relationship. We want to know about the women. We have blind spots. The joy of this is remedy those blind spots. So I just really hope that you get to dive into Marsha Mason as much as we do, because it was just really, truly, I feel like she brought us home. She brought us home.
The Ethel Gumm of it all.
It's time for a rewatch of Me and My Shadows. Folks, if you're into that, you might know where to go. And that is the You Might Know Her From Patreon. We know we called this a finale, but it's not a goodbye. We are going to be all summer in your ears on the Patreon. It's where we get to talk a little bit more shit. It's behind a paywall. We go deep on books, memoirs. We do recaps of award shows. We did Interview with the Vampire season 1 and 2. Lestat is coming soon. We did In Just Like That recaps. We are interviewing non-actresses like comedians and lovers Andy Beckerman and Naomi Ekperigin. We talked to Oscar prognosticator and film critic Nathaniel Rogers of The Film Experience. So all of this stuff, we'd like to call it actress adjacent, and we will be watching and talking about Me and My Shadows, because it's kind of, maybe it's a summertime watch. Do you know what I mean? It's going to bring us into Pride. It's going to bring us right where we need to be. You know, like Liza's book came out this year, and that is a delight and also a strange phenomenon, but we recapped that on the Patreon as well. But like, I feel like Me and My Shadows is underseen. It's hard to find. Get yourself a DVD player. It's probably, it's probably on YouTube. But the point is, all of this goodness is going to be on the Patreon. And that's where you're going to find Anne and Damien all summer. We will be back with a new season, a new cluster of episodes, as Damien said, in the near future. But in the meantime, if you want to keep what you hear on the main feed going, the best thing you can do is support us on the Patreon. And we know that it's hard. We know that money is tight. If you need to come and go as you please and you have the money this month but not next month, we totally understand that. I do that all the time. We are so grateful for the patrons because they're what keeps this show on the road. It's how we've been able to do this and come back weekly, do the live show. We are building so much momentum and we're so grateful for the patrons. So we love you. Find us over there. Stay subscribed. We might be dropping some surprise episodes along the way. You never know who's going to come out of the woodwork. Penelope Ann Miller, we're looking at you.
Yeah, that was funny. Folks, if you think Anne's funny, if you like what we do, you can also find us on social media. That's Instagram and TikTok at You Might Know Her From. You can also find me and Anne on our respective handles. You can find all that good stuff on the apps. And also, shout out to Gang. Gang puts all of that music that you hear underneath each and every episode of You Might Know Her From. If you like Gang, you can stream their music wherever you listen to your bops. And also, thank you to our editor, Adam Brown. Adam, what a complete joy this has been to do with you this season. Thank you so much for your excellent editing and wonderful communication.
If you need to see those clips that Damien talked to Marsha Mason about, her on the phone in Only When I Laugh, her reading the letter in The Goodbye Girl, those things are going to be online in the show notes. Beneath the episode description, I archive each and everything so that we always have a reference point to go back and watch those clips whenever we want, whenever you want.
So Me and My Shadows is on YouTube because I watched it, let's say, within the last 2 years. And well, I mean, it was. And I watched the whole thing on YouTube because it was unavailable to stream. Anne has been talking about why it is so important to have hard copies. And this is why, because, if it was taken down on YouTube, who knows how I'll watch it. But it was all on YouTube. And I did look for, and it is my life's mission to find the moment that Taya Gill, if you know, she is one of the lesbians from the original Queer as Folk. She's one of the actors.
Lindsay, the blonde lesbian from Queer as Folk.
She allegedly played Lucille Bremer, the actress who was in Meet Me in St. Louis as Rose opposite Judy Garland's Esther. So she apparently appears in Me and My Shadows as Lucille Bremer. I think it's because it probably shot in Canada and she is probably like a local hire, and it might be essentially like a glorified cameo extra where she like has no lines, but it's like she's there in the background in an outfit that is like a replica. Yeah. This is my thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, putting you on the spot now here on the finale, but is that information enough for you to be ready to have Taya Gill on You Might Know Her From?
100%. She is, I'm not sure I'm ready to call Taya Gill a lesbian icon, but we'll see if she comes on the show. Maybe I'll say it to her face. She played one of the most public display of lesbianism on television until we had the L word. So like that might be enough. But Lucille Bremer, I have a story about Lucille Bremer, but it's got to go behind a paywall. So if you want to hear it, I'm so sorry. We'll see you on the Patreon.